Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan and joining me as always is Martyn Sadler. And Martyn, we've got a very special guest today that probably doesn't need an introduction because everyone can recognise the great Garry Schofield, but I'll let you do the honours, Martyn.
Well, one of the greatest players for Great Britain in the history of our sport. Played 46 times for Great Britain, Garry. That probably wasn't enough as far as you're concerned, but an absolutely wonderful player throughout the 1980s and much of the 90s, and it's a real pleasure to have you. Of course, Garry writes a weekly column in League Express, which everybody reads very eagerly, and if ever there was a guy who speaks his mind, it's Garry. And Garry, welcome to this podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and we look forward to hearing what you've got to say, mate.
Well, it's a pleasure, guys. Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me here, and I look forward to being part of this. And well, as you know, Martyn, being open and honest.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, we'll get it underway by just asking you, Garry, when you were a young fella, if we could take you back. How did you get into the game? What attracted you to playing rugby league? And then I guess, also who were some of those mentors for you in your early childhood career?
Well, I went to a school called Clapgate Middle School, and I was there. I went from a 5-year-old, but we didn't start playing rugby league until it was under 9s. But the mentor, who was a big, massive mentor in my career at a very early age, was a gentleman called Mr. Harry Jepson, who, as everybody knows, I say Martyn from there, the massive, massive personality in the game of rugby league, and he was my deputy headmaster. And the big thing about it was rugby league for the boys and netball for the girls. There was no round ball in the school whatsoever. You couldn't have a round ball when it was playtime, dinner time, anything. It was just rugby league, and that's what it was, and that's how I got introduced to it.
I think Harry deserves a medal just for that, actually, Garry.
Oh, I'll tell you what, Martyn, because I do a bit of walking now, and I walk past, because I live near the Clapgate School now, and I walk past it now, and Mr. Jepson will be looking down in tears and horror and shock, because there's no rugby post there now anymore. It's football posts. Really? How times have changed.
Yeah, wow.
Absolutely, yes.
And to think, if he had have allowed other sports there, what could have become of your career, mate?
He would have been playing for Leeds United.
Do you know what? Funny you should say. My dad was a footballer. But my dad does. He was a county player, and he got asked to go for trials for Leeds United. Anyway, for whatever reason, he didn't bother going. But he was a footballer. He never went to a rugby league school, and what. Even though the school he went to, the great Bill Ramsey went, Sid Hines went, Kenny Ayres went from there. But he only played football, and I say it was never a matter of, well, listen, son, I want you to be a footballer. You're not playing rugby league. No. He fully backed me to be not just the player I was, but also to the person too.
Yeah, perfect. And I guess, at what age did you start to realise, hang on, this could be, something I pursue and can earn some money from?
Well, if I'm honest, it was 9 years of age, and for the first 2 years at school, and again, my dad, and as I do to all incentives to the sons of one of you, he said to me, well, listen, you get 5p a goal, and you get 10p a try. But I didn't kick any goals because Dave Creaser played for Leeds at Great Britain. He was my schoolmate, so he kicked the goals out at Clapgate. So my first 2 seasons at Clapgate, first year I scored 65 tries. The second season I scored 58. So after then, from a point of view, my dad stopped that because it was costing too much, and I was a little bit upset about that, to be honest with you. But it was costing him a few quid. But I guess from 9 years of age, because I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. I wouldn't say I enjoyed the physicality of it. Yeah. I guess people would know from my professional days until I guess I moved to standoff and had to do a little bit of tackling, if I'm honest with you. I didn't really enjoy the physicality of it, but once I got the ball in my hand, I just wanted to score tries. I had plenty of pace on there. And
lots of sidestepping ability, I would think, Garry, from an early age.
Yeah, it was, Martyn, yeah. And then, but also, back in them days, where unfortunately nowadays, with school rugby league, it's not there, but when you realise when you're starting getting picked for your district side, Hunslet schoolboys, and also too with Mr. Jepson's influence, when Leeds won the Challenge Cup in 77-78, he brought the Challenge Cup to Clapgate. We all had his pictures taken. To be honest with you, I nearly say I got to lift the Challenge Cup, to be honest with you. I never got the chance to lift it professionally, but at a very early age, I wanted to be a professional rugby league player.
I guess you fast forward from there, just 9 years later, it was quite a rapid rise for you. I think you were the youngest player at the time to debut for the British Lions. I guess, was it your dream come true, and did you expect to represent Great Britain at such a young age?
No, not at all. And I say from the amateur days, and I say from Parks, from Clapgate School, Parkside High School, then Hunslet Parkside, and then captain in Barla to New Zealand, and then obviously signing for Hull, my first professional club. It was just because when you look at that whole side, it was full of international quality players, and but again, another mentor of mine who literally, it was like a second father to me, was David Topless, the late great David Topless. And what David said to Arthur Bunchy was, after we'd beaten Kells in the National Cup over in Blackpool, and Topo said to Arthur, "Listen, Schofield's ready for first team football." So that was a great compliment from the great
absolutely
from the great David Topless. So I took Steve Evans' place. Steve was my winger, and as I say, from my first season, finishing the top try scorer with 38 tries. But the thing about it was, I made my debut for Hull in August. And it was against Warrington, by the way, and Ronnie Dwayne was a great...
What year was that then?
83, Martin.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Dwayne was my opposition. He was a Great Britain centre, boy oh boy. He knocked hell out of me. He made me black and blue. And I can just tell you, then the next game we went to Widnes. Eric Hughes was the centre.
Oh,
he knocked hell out of me. And then the week
he
after,
knocked hell out of everybody, didn't he?
He knocked hell out of me, did Eric Hughes. The week after, we went to St Helens. Roy Haggerty did the same. And then the week after, went to Ulkiar and played against Gary Prome. And he did exactly the same as well. And I'm thinking, boy, oh boy, why do they want to knock hell out of an 18-year-old? Surely it's going to get easier. Yeah. Anyway, it got easier, but also... I made my test debut in January, and the big thing about that was it's the boringest game of rugby league I've ever been involved with. It was a 10-0 victory against France. Freezing cold nights, absolutely siling down of rain. David Hobbs kicked 5 goals. That's how the points were scored. It was an awful game. I had an absolute stinker. And bearing in mind the British Lions tour was at the end of the season. But you know what, Frank Myler, it was great to me after that game. He just said, "Hey, listen, Scully," he says, you know yourself, and I know that I want your best of your games. But if you keep playing how you're playing for the rest of the season, you never know what might happen. And unfortunately, I got selected for the 84 tour.
It's really interesting to reflect on, some players like Garry who made a test debut and it didn't go well. And the obvious one I'm thinking of is Darren Lockyer. He had a shocking debut for Australia against New Zealand, if you remember, but... his career recovered, you might say, mightn't you? And it's funny, I don't know whether it was nerves, Garry, or what that made you not play that well on that first game, but fortunately it didn't affect you in the long term.
Well, you know what, guys, what was funny enough was, because John Basnett were on my wing, and at that time, right, we were both level on the try-scoring charts on 22 apiece, and me and Basnett were arguing like hell, because I wanted to get the ball, and obviously I wanted to make an impression, and old Basnett was saying to me, listen, you, when you get that ball, pass it to me, because I want to score some tries. And I thought, well, I'm not a centre's winger, to be honest with you. If I get the ball under the try lines, anywhere near 15, 20 yards, you're not getting it, mate, I can reassure you, from there. But me and him were doing more arguing regarding who was going to, touch the ball the most and score the tries. But it was a nightmare of a debut for me for Great Britain. Yeah. And as I say, Frank said in words to me, and it was a massive boost, to be honest with you, an absolute massive boost, because I just thought, well, obviously, I've made my debut. People may think I'm not ready for it. Certainly, the British Lions tour won't be coming at the end of the season. Who'll know when I play again? To test football. But
one of the key moments in your development as a player, Garry, was that New Zealand tour, wasn't it? With Barla, which I think was in 1983, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And those were great days, because all you young kids from the amateur clubs all around the country, came together and had a tour like that, and you're up against some pretty stiff opposition in New Zealand. But it was a tour that you weren't the only guy who later on became very famous, were you? There were a lot of teammates on that tour who made the grade.
And, I think everybody in that squad as well in the Barla HV. By the way, Barla has been the best system for anybody. To come through the amateur system and then to turn professional, and then go on to have great careers. But everybody in that Barla squad signed professional. And as you say, there's Derek Fox on there, Dave Creaser, Gary Devote, Seamus McCallion, John Allen, David Ruane, so there's Derek Fox, as I mentioned. There's loads on there who went on to have a great professional career and also to turn out to be quality international
players. Do you still remember much about that tour?
Oh, yeah, brilliant. And as I say, it was a squad. we all said, because back in them days, there was the Colt system, under 17s, and there's always a big fight between Barlow and the professional game with this Colt system. And anyway, we all made a commitment to each other because we all wanted to go to New Zealand on this tour. And Kenny Everson was the coach, and the great Ray Clark, and they had a great atmosphere. It was one big family. It wasn't a matter of we've got Yorkshire, Lancashire there, Cumbria. We was all one big massive family. And by the way, we went out on that tour because the Aussie schoolboys wouldn't take us on because we got beat by France. We got beat by France over here, and they didn't think we were good enough. So we went to New Zealand instead, and they was a quality side. Big Buck Shelfer was their captain from there, and Tuma Varvey, and a few of us played in that team. And you know what? It's the most successful Barlow tour because we won 7 out of 8 games on that tour, and winning the Test match 16-10 was not just a surprise, maybe to us, but everybody back over here. But that squad was full of quality players.
It certainly was. Yeah, I still remember it. Yeah, that's 40 years ago now, isn't it? And,
can you believe it? Where's 40 years ago?
I know. You may well ask.
Now, one of the things I wish that they would bring back are those, British Lions tours, the Kangaroo tours. It's something we don't really see these days, unfortunately, and it's probably a bit hard with some of the scheduling we're seeing. But I guess, can you take us back to some of those early memories of your first Lions tour? And I guess some of the other ones you went on as well. But I'm sure both on the field and off the field, there's a heap of stories you could tell us.
Well, 84, it was because obviously I was only 18 years of age, and we had some very experienced players, the late great Mickey Adams, the John Joyner, Mike Smith, and Chris Burton's, so great experience for captained by Brian Noble, Keith Rainwell, Andy Goodway, Ellery, and what have you. But and I was only 18, and all I did was just follow like a sheep. Yeah. And if I'm honest with you, fellas, it was like a Jolly Boys outing. Yeah. It was like a Jolly Boys because we was in the best hotels there, but we were only on a bed and breakfast basis. Okay. And our coaching team were, Frankie Marlowe was a great bloke, Frank. You wouldn't say he was the best coach tactically, but man management-wise, he was okay. Then we had Dick Gemmell as a team manager, who, realistically, he really did enjoy the Jolly Boys. Don't worry about that. And then Roland Davis was a great. He was a business manager from there. But as I say, as a Jolly Boys, so we didn't have any curfews. We didn't have any team meetings. So once and by the way, we trained 3 times a day. We had the Condis the first time. I think Great Britain took it. Rod McKenzie.
Yeah, oh yes.
It was the first time I think they'd taken away a full-time fitness guy. So we trained 3 times a day, 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But then after then, it was just, you've got your own time. So if I'm honest with you, we were certainly when we were in Sydney. New South Wales Leeds Club were just up the road, and so they did a nice deal for $5. They did a starter and a nice steak salad, and then it was just. And then, if I'm honest with you, we just got on the drink. Got on the drink because there was nothing organised or set up for us and what have you. So all we did, we just got on the drink. Bearing in mind, we still did us training, all this sort of thing, but boy oh boy, we certainly enjoyed ourselves off the field. But when you look to what the Kangaroos did to us in '82, the Invincibles, the way that everybody saw them play for there. Yeah. When you look at the score lines in them 3 Test matches, I think it was 23-6, 18-6, and 25-6 on the score line, and on the scoreboard we was getting a bit closer, but we still got hammered, 3-0 to be honest with you from there.
What about that try you scored at Lang Park, Gary?
Yeah, it's the best try I've ever scored in my career, Martyn.
It was wonderful, and I'd recommend anybody to watch it. Do a YouTube search for Australia v GB at Lang Park in 1984, and you'll see some great tries. There were some great tries in the game, but Gary's try was absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, the best try I scored I say in my career from there.
Can you remember much about it?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I think Brian Noble to Tony Myler to me to Desi Drummond. Desi passed it back to me. I passed it back to Desi. Desi passed it to Andy Goodway. Andy Goodway passed it to me, and I ended Kerry Bostoff in the corner from there to score.
I'm sure that this side of his hangs in there and desperately tries to save the series. There are plenty of people who reckon that Noble's the best captain to come out of Yorkshire since Captain Cook. Well, I don't know about that, but he's able to inspire this run from Schofield. Schofield has got it back to Drummond. Drummond's got support too from Goodway. Across it goes to Schofield again. Schofield for the corner and scores. What a try! That is one of the best tries that you'll ever see.
I'd say the best try that I've ever scored. But I tell you what, it just, and again, it's them friendships what you get on the tour. My roommate was Joseph Lydon. I love Joseph to death, and I say he went.
I don't hear many people calling him Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph. Yeah, he went out as a top centre, because we saw him 2 tries at Wembley from there, and Joseph went out as a pin-up boy, but unfortunately for whatever reason, same with Andy Gregg, it didn't work out for him on tour, on that '84 tour, but as we all know, later in the careers, what great players both Gregg and Joseph was.
Yeah, and were you able to have or enjoy a few drinks off the pitch with the Australian boys as well?
The Aussies never mixed with you, to be honest with you.
Really?
No. No, after the Test matches, no, there were no, going to different dressing rooms or whatever, and whatever. No, we never really had the drinks with them, to be honest with you.
Even in later tours in your career?
No, we didn't. No.
Wow.
And certainly after we smacked the backsides in Melbourne, anyway, that's for sure. But no, but what? Because always over here there was always a dinner at the end of the series, but in Australia there was never anything like that.
No, it's interesting, isn't it?
Bizarre, because obviously in the Ashes with like cricket, they often will go have a dressing room drink with the opposing side. So I mean, who knows? It might have changed since then, but a little bit disappointing.
Never happened. No, not in my day, anyway. No.
And then I guess later on in your career, you were able to go and play for Balmain in Australia. Can you talk me how that opportunity sort of arose, and then how you found your experience playing in Australia?
Well, the opportunity, obviously, because the great man himself, Frankie Stanton, he was the coach of Australia in '84. And anyway, so I went to Balmain in '85, but also as well Keith Barnes. What a great bloke Keith Barnes is, and and he was the CEO there, and but the relationship what Dave Toppers had with Balmain Tigers, because Topper, I think was it 77,
77, yeah.
77, he played from there. Anyway, Barnes said, you were interested in Scoy. Do you think it'd be interested in coming? But Parramatta wanted me to go there, because Sterlo wanted me to go to Parramatta, but unfortunately, Parramatta wanted me to play reserve grade, and I thought, well, play reserve grade. I'm an international player. I'm not going there to play reserve grade. But having said that, when you looked at their backline, and they had Kenny, Sterling, Mick Cronin, Steve Ella, Paul Taylor, and whatever. They'll say, well, we can't get rid of Steve Ella, we can't get rid of Mick Cronin. Well, I'm not going there to play reserve grade, not in an arrogant point of way. Anyway, so Balmain sold himself very well to me, and if I'm honest with you, the rest is history. Got out there, and as I say. As we know, the Flyings got there the Saturday morning in '85. The next day, we was playing down in Canberra. So they called a training session for me. I played in reserves first. They called a training session, got to know the boys from there. Went to Canberra the next day, and then played the full reserve game. Then played 20 minutes, because what you do know, as they say out there, reserve grade players, then they go on the bench for the first grade game as well. So I got 20 minutes at the end of that. Frank then decided I was ready to go into the first team the week after against Parramatta.
Yeah.
Against Parramatta, and I scored a try, took an intercept off Sterlo. I knew exactly what Sterlo was going to do down the right hand side, because obviously I played with Peter and also with John Muggleton. He created a 3-on-2 down the right hand side, because he was attacking the right and I was on the left, and I knew exactly what he was doing. And as he passed the ball straight to my bread basket, went to the sticks, and when I looked behind, about 35 yards behind, Sterlo's got his hands on the hips, and I know exactly what his words were. I knew what that pommy so-and-so was going to do, and why did I pass the ball? But Frank Stanton, he was absolutely magical for me, because the first words Frank said to me was quite simple, and it was music to my ears, fellas. He just said, listen, lad, you're here to score us tries, you've got a free roll.
Yeah,
music to my, as a 19-year-old Englishman going out there playing in the best competition in the world, and Frank Stanton, the Australian coach, is giving you a free roll. All he said was, listen, get back into the defensive line, when you can, and we could take it from there. But smart thing what he did, he put Wayne Pearce on the right hand side. So normally Pearce did about 800 tackles a season. When I was there, he did about 1,250, because he had to do most of my tackling, to be honest with you. But Frank Stanton was excellent for me as a coach, because he never took anything away from my game, from a point of view where, because I would never in the senses really, because all I did, and it was a big thing what my father said to me as a young kid, was quite simple. If the ball's not coming to you, go looking for it, and that's exactly what I did as a professional.
But it's interesting what you say about Stanton, because most Aussie coaches from those days, probably still today, put tackling as the number one thing in rugby league. I mean, I'm reading a biography of David Topless at the moment, which charts his career. And when he went to Penrith in 1975, I think it was, he got dropped to reserve grade because his tackling stats didn't add up to, some of the players around him. And interestingly enough, at the time, Mike Stevenson, was playing for Penrith, as was Bill Ashurst. And Steve-O said to the coach, well, this bloke's not here to tackle, he's here to create and score tries for us. But it cut no ice with I can't remember who the coach was at the time for Penrith, but it's that attitude was.
Well, Tim Sheens, Tim Sheens.
No, it
was
wasn't.
playing.
Tim Sheens was playing. Yeah. No, but whoever you're here to tackle it. And if you only make 15 tackles in a game and some other guy's making 30, then we're going to pick him.
Well, I can tell you, never once did Frank Stanton say to me, "Hey, listen, Scully, I need you to start doing some more tackling."
Topo had the same. When he went to Balmain in 1977, it was similar. Chalk and cheese. He got the freedom to play as he wanted to play, just as you did. And I think it must have been Frank Stanton who was the coach at that time. So, it says a lot for Stanton, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely brilliant. I'll tell you what, though, because he had the nickname as well, Cranky Frankie. And one thing what he did with me, because... And I shouldn't have done it, and I never ever did it again in my career. I was playing a little bit with an injury, a bit of a shoulder problem. Anyway, and we played North Sydney this day, and we got beat 12-8, and had a shocker, to be honest with you, because I wasn't really fully fit. Anyway, after the game, Frank had addressed you. Anyway, before he got in the showers, he'd addressed you, and I was the first one after this game, and he just said, "Scully, were you fit today?" I just said, "Yes, Frank." He just said, "Well, I'm asking you, were you fit today?" I said, "Yes, Frank. Yeah, I was." Anyway, so then we got showered again, and then he addressed everybody again. And then I was the first one again before I was allowed to leave. He just said, "Scully, were you fit today?" I said, "Yeah, I was, Frank." He said, "Right, okay then." And bearing in mind, I wonder how many British coaches say this to all the Australian players, or to all the Australian players who have been over here, since the international ban got lifted. Frank Stanton said to me, "Well, listen, if you play like that again for me, you're on the next plane home."
Yeah, well.
Not in reserve grade,
not
dropped. You're on the next plane home. I never played injured again.
Yeah, jeez.
Never. What an experience it was.
Yeah,
well, what an experience. As a 19, 20-year-old, what an experience.
I bet you must have walked home with your ears ringing on that day.
Well, Martyn, he just told me the simple lesson. Don't play injured.
Yeah.
Don't play injured.
Your heart must have just sunk hearing those words.
Well, yeah, but having said that, I respected it because it's come from Frank Stanton. The best coach in the world. The Australian coach, the Balmain coach. He's been a Manly coach, and who could argue with Frank Stanton?
And he wouldn't have said those words to you if you didn't think you could have handled it and bounced back, I guess, and it's probably a way to motivate you as a young fella to...
Well, I guess from a point of view, because, Frank had the nickname Cranky Frankie, and he with some of the games as well at times, when he ripped into plays. But then his man management styles, when we got to training on the Tuesday, was sensational.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Absolutely sensational.
Well,
so again, what Frank, I guess maybe what he was doing, and I guess he's done it, I'm led to believe Wally Lewis didn't really take to Frank, to be honest with you, because of his man management or his coaching. But Frank, I would imagine, would have been trying to find out what sort of character you had. And that maybe sometimes why he did it. Maybe it right, maybe it wrong, and see what reaction players did. But I tell you what, it taught me a lesson to never play.
And of course, Stanton was the coach of the 82 Kangaroos, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
So that and they played with a freedom that sort of reflects what you're just saying, really, doesn't it? So interesting.
And we saw a reflection of that freedom in '86. I believe you were the leading try scorer. I think they said that you were the first Englishman to lead that count with about 13 tries, I believe, that season. And is that a bit of a reflection of that license to sort of roam and score tries?
Absolutely, and also as well. And because of a couple of coaches, British coaches over here, saying to me, "Don't go for interceptions." Well, my great team at Leeds, and I'm very much in contact with now, Craig Coleman. I took plenty of intercepts from him, took a couple from Cliff Lyons and whatever. But one thing again, what Frank never said to me was, "Listen, don't go for interception. You just play how you want to play." And I can reassure everybody. From a point of view where, by the way, that's why I didn't get picked for the World Cup, in 1995 with Hull Larder, because I won't stop going for interception.
No.
How pathetic is that, by the way? But still, Frank Stanton never once said to me, You don't do this and you don't do that. It's quite simple. I had a free roll and I did exactly what I was allowed to do.
Yeah, wow, that's
Great.
amazing. And obviously you play with a lot of great players, both over here and Australia. If you had to sort of give us your, top 5. You've written down a few team lists here. You're welcome to read that if you like.
Yeah, can I just say, because when I look at the players, when we look back at the '82 Kangaroos, and now we're looking at 40 years, and when I'll just name the all-time team I played against, and the names on this, and also to the all-time team that I played with. So my all-time team against: Garry Jack, Eric Grove, Mal Meninga, Gene Miles, Martyn Afire. Jeez. We talk about the pace you got there, but what about the creativity here? Wally Lewis and Peter Sterling.
Yeah.
Jeez, what about the creativity? And then thirdly, what about this for a forward pack? Lee Crooks, Benny Elias, Steve Roach, Paul Surinam, Wayne Pearce and Ellery Hanley. Well, you've got toughness, you've got mobility, and as I say in the pearl there, the try scoring. And then when I look at the best team that I've ever played with, and I say with the players in this, again, Garry Jack, Jason Robinson, I've got Ellery in the centre here, James Luluai, Martyn Afire. Tony Myler, he'd have been the best stand-up we produced if he wasn't injured, Martyn.
He would have been, yeah.
And then the forward pack, Crooks, Elias, Roach, Sheringham Pearce, and the great legendary Steve Norton. When you look at the class of players from there, everybody had, and it was the right balance from pack of forwards, tough, mobility and creativity. The halfbacks, you look at the creativity on the halfbacks there, and all them guys who wanted out in the outside backs from the centres and the wingers, they just wanted space to be given to, and they would score plenty of tries.
What a shame you can't clone those guys and bring them back today, isn't it?
And unfortunately, before my time too, so I only get to relive those moments
on
through
YouTube.
highlight YouTube as well.
And also as well, when I mentioned the two big centres there, because surely they've got to be the biggest centre partnership in Australian Rugby League in Mal Meninga and Gene Miles.
Yes.
Well, I'll just tell you
who
here,
both played in Great Britain, of course, for St Helens and Wigan respectively.
and I can tell you, when I was lined up against them in 1984, bearing in mind I've been watching them in 1982, I'm thinking, geez, how do you stop these? And then when I got picked for the first test, because again, my dad was my mentor, and also to when you talk about psychologists, my dad was my psychologist, because his words to me was quite simple as a young kid. It was, don't you worry about them, son. Let them worry about you. So when I got picked for the first test, and I phoned my dad up 12,000 miles away, I said, Dad, I've been picked for the first test. Oh, how good's that, son? How are you feeling? So I said, yeah, I'm feeling great. I can't wait to get out there and see what I can do. And then I said to him, Dad, I'm playing against Meninga and Miles. What do you reckon? He said, what have I always told you, son? Don't you worry about them. Let them worry about you.
I wonder whether they did, Gary.
Well, and then when I put the phone down, 10 seconds later, I'm thinking, it's all right, you saying that, 12,000 miles away. 12,000 miles away. And then 24 hours later, I'm stood 10 yards away from him, singing the national anthem, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, Dad. Jesus Christ, can you give me any better advice than that? Because I can reassure you, it was very, very intimidating. Big Gene Miles is 6'5". Big Miles got legs, like tree trunks on there. But what an experience from there.
And presumably, Gary, neither Gene Miles nor Mal Meninga looked worried.
Oh, not at all. No. Well, looking at skinny 18-year-old, we were back then. I was 12 stone back then. Yeah. And also Garry Jack made, I'm led to believe, made the comment, what the English doing, thinking they could put an 18-year-old against us.
Yeah.
Which I think was a massive compliment, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I'm going to fall back with Garry Jack.
Yeah.
But I say, looking at Gene Miles and Mal Meninga from 10 yards away, and I'm singing the national anthem, I'm thinking the words what my dad said to me, I'm thinking, this is going to be interesting for 80 minutes, and I can reassure you, the threw me around like a rag doll.
Yeah. Can I just move on, Gary, to one of the disappointments in your career?
Yeah.
Because you've already said you didn't lift the Challenge Cup.
Yeah.
But you got to Wembley, of course, in 1985. Yeah. With Hull, but you were left on the bench, weren't you?
Yeah, I was dropped. Yeah.
I mean, that must have been devastating, really, for you.
Oh, the biggest one of the... Well, I would say...
Did you get an explanation from Arthur Bunting?
No.
Right.
It was quite simple. Jimmy Luluai had busted his shoulder 6 weeks prior. Anyway, so it was touch and go whether James had made the cup final. And I say... in the quarter final we played Widnes. We drew 6 apiece at the Boulevard, and then we went to Norton Park on the Wednesday, and I scored 2 tries, kicked a couple of goals, and we played semi-final against Castle. Anyway, so we got to the final, and then it was just on the Thursday tea time, James declared himself fit, and then I just said, "Score it." James has declared himself fit. I'm playing Steve in the centre. You're on the bench. Massive. I just went, oh, all right. Came as a total shock.
Yeah.
Didn't expect it. And do you know what? Colin Clark, who was a coach, and also too, I know because the Wigan players have told me, Sean Edwards has told me, and the late great David Stevenson and a few others said, when we heard that score, we weren't playing, it just made our job a little bit easier, you know. But anyway, that's a nice compliment. But it's one of the apart from being left out of the 1995 World Cup squad, you know, that's the second biggest disappointment not playing being picked at Wembley.
It reminds me of the 2005 Challenge Cup final when Leeds were playing Hull. And the Leeds coach, Tony Smith at the time, dropped Barry McDermott and kept Keith Senior in. And the whole team said...
Which one was it when Maguire got dropped and got left out? What year was that? Because that was a massive surprise as well.
Yes, I'm trying to remember what that year was. But yeah, there have often been... And Sinfield didn't get picked for one Challenge Cup final as well.
Wasn't it? Dean
Yes,
Lance,
it was.
Wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are always these shocks out there. And, you know, very often they don't seem to work.
All it does, it gives the opposition the boost.
Of course it does.
That's what it does. Yeah. And it's a compliment to you players who have been dropped.
Yeah.
You know, but it's still no good for you because, you know, you're sat on the subs bench, you want to be out there, or you're being left out totally. No, but it just gives a massive boost to the opposition.
So just subsequently, you left Hull, didn't you, to come to Leeds? And that was a
87,
really controversial move as far as the Hull fans were concerned, which made you unpopular with them for quite a long time.
Even to this day.
But what was the reality behind that, Gary?
Well, the fact of the matter was, the contract system had just come in, and bearing in mind as well, 1987, the whole club were in a financial mess, Martyn. They were in a financial mess. The ambition had seemed to go. The directors were leaving left, right, and centre. Well, one director, Peter Darley, he was the vice chairman or the chairman. Yeah, Roy Ward was the chairman, and at one point, after one game, it took the gate taking zone, put him in the boot. Bearing in mind he was an accountant, Mr. Darley. It took and then when he gets up next morning, the money had been pissed out of his car. I think I get blamed for that from Hull fans.
Marvellous.
But anyway, but the whole club they were starting going downhill. But anyway, the contract system had just come in. And me and Lee Crooks was offered £10,000. Anyway, we wanted a bit more. We wanted 15 grand a piece. Anyway, they said, listen, we can't afford it. So I said, right, okay then. If that's what you're telling us, that's what you can't pay us, we'll accept it. You know, so we both signed 3-year deals. Anyway, within a couple of weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, to go down Wales, I signed Gary Pearce, the Welsh standoff, you know. Give him 20 grand. Hold on, we went, hold on. You told us you're going to leave forward. They said you're giving somebody who's untried whatsoever, and doubling his wages compared to us. So we goes knocking on the door. Anyway, they said there's no more. But to be honest with you, they wanted rid of Lee anyway. They'd had enough of Lee, you know, for one reason, for one reason or the other. Plus as well, the club were in a massive financial mess. And so, from my point of view, the directors told us lies. And as I say, and the way that they was telling the lies about what I had said to the press, it was Mr. Wardby who was saying ridiculous things from a point of view. So I just thought, well, listen. You know, the ambition, what you've got, you've told us lies. Certainly you've told me lies. You know, it's about time that we went separate ways. It took a long time. It took 8 weeks to get me done from there. And as I say, but Hull, from a point of view, got £328,000. From a point of view with two lads, Crooks' contract was worth, when he signed for Hull, 20 grand. Mine was worth £22,000. So overall, they made a nice little profit.
Yeah. And the fans shouldn't really complain about it, should they?
Oh, not at all. No.
But of course, they never heard the true story.
No. Not whatsoever.
Yeah.
But as I say, Hull was in an absolute mess. The ambition had gone. They were in a financial mess from there, and they had to get rid of two of the main assets. And then another one went, I think he came and joined us at Leeds, well, Gary Devoto as well, due to the same reason of the financial problems.
Yeah.
And how did you find those first few years at Leeds? Was it like refreshing to be at a new club?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, you loved it. You know, Leeds, they're the biggest club in the game, whether people like it or not. You know, they're the biggest club in the game, and no, coming home was fantastic. But also too, though, the interesting. I made my debut against Auckland. I signed for Leeds on the Friday. I was playing the Touring Auckland side on the Sunday. My first try I scored, it was an interception. I got the pass at half. I got that
Inevitably
from Clayton Friend. And anyway, so I scored 2 tries in the first half, and then in the second half, I was literally going down the south stand. Literally, I was going for my hat trick. Somehow the fullback tackled me and I sprained my ankle. Anyway, we're down and gone. Anyway, so I couldn't carry on, and I got carried off and going down the south stand, and the south stand's shouting, "Cancel that check! Cancel that check! He's knackered! Cancel that check! He's knackered!" I thought, I'm only 23 years of age from there, but that's the south stand for you. But I can reassure you, the applaud, you know, and the respect, certainly even to this day, what the south stand have for me. I love the club. I love Leeds Rugby League Club, and I certainly love them South Sanders and all the Leeds fans. They were great for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant.
And fast forward a few years, 1990, you won the Golden Boot Award. What was that like to receive that honour?
Well, didn't receive it
Martyn,
for quite a few years. In those days, we used to prove the Golden Boot was our property, and in 1990, it wasn't awarded to Garry because the previous owner of Open Rugby, Harry Edgar, he'd had the Golden Boot sponsored by Adidas, who pulled out, apparently. And, you know, Garry should have got it, but it wasn't actually awarded. So we awarded it many years later when we bought out Open Rugby magazine, turned it into Rugby League World magazine. And one of the things we wanted to do was to put right that wrong and make sure that Garry had his Golden Boot. And so it was probably about 2012, was it, that we...
2010.
2010 that we gave you it.
2010,
many years later. But, you know, justice was done in the end. So
I didn't know that. Yeah, a little piece of history.
Oh,
That's awesome.
Well, didn't the Aussies... the Aussies wanted an Aussie to get it, didn't they?
Oh, they did, yes.
No.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Adidas, in particular the sponsor, were involved mainly with Australian Rugby League and at the time, and they thought it should go to an Aussie. Okay. But, of course, whoever voted, and I don't know who did vote in those days, but it was Garry who got the nod, clearly. And but as I say, justice was done 20 years later, and much deserved. So Gary's name is, you know, on the Golden Boot winners list as alongside some other magnificent players.
And it was the year 1990 where, in the Test series against the Aussies, you know, played very well against, and then, you know, ripped the Kiwis apart as well. You know, we're selling all them dummies and that sort of thing. You know, so from an international point.
But the Golden Boot was bought from us by the Rugby League International Federation, as it was. It's now International Rugby League. And the interesting thing is that there are 7 years when the Golden Boot wasn't awarded, which is 1991 to 1997. When we bought Open Rugby, we brought the Golden Boot back in 1998. But there are 7 years it's not been awarded, and I keep suggesting to the international body that they ought to fill in those blanks, you know, because there were players from each of those years who no doubt, you know, would have... I mean, there were some really great Test series from 1991 to 1997, and there are a lot of players who played then who would have qualified for the Golden Boot if it had been awarded. And one day I hope to see all those blanks filled in. Yeah,
that'd be nice. You just have to get like a little, I guess, a nomination board of people who were able to watch those matches and live through that time, maybe former players.
People remember those days. Yeah.
But I must say that it's the biggest honour I've received in my career. You know, because to be the best, to be the best in the sport in the world, it's got to be the best.
And that followed that 1990 tour of New Zealand, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, we were talking about earlier, you know, about the amount of dummies what New Zealand took.
Yes.
Jeez, honestly, and I say that Test series, I think they took more dummies than what Mothercare saw in 6 months. To be honest with you, which was very, very surprising. You know, because they had a quality side, then Martyn, New Zealand in 1990, and the quality players and the experienced players what they had, and they just held off myself, and I just thought, well, if you're not going to tackle me, I'm just going to keep going and score the tries.
Well, they just never played. I mean, rugby league in New Zealand in those days was pretty basic, wasn't it? You know, players weren't taught to dummy, and you know, so when you were faced with a guy who was brilliant at dummying as you were, they'd very often take it, wouldn't they? I think.
they took plenty of that Test series anyway. Me and Malcolm really still like to talk about it now.
Yeah.
I will say, I watched a few of your highlights on YouTube just in preparation for the podcast, and one of the things I picked up was just with how much instinct you played. You always played what was in front of you, and the dummies was the first thing I picked up on. How great you were at selling that dummy. We had a little interesting chat just before the podcast about some of the players that have come to you for your advice in terms of mentoring young players on how to sell that dummy. Can you tell me that story, or tell the listeners that story you told me before?
Yeah. Did I say, because obviously when I first started, I was a try scorer, but then I got moved to stand off, and it was all about creativity. So I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, Andrew Johns phoned me up, and he had Kearnan Foran at the side of him, and he said, "Scott, as we've just been talking about the New Zealand Test series, I've just been watching the New Zealand Test series, and can you just explain to Kearnan here, how realistic, how you thought about when you was thinking about attacking the defence?" He says, "Yeah, quite easily. So that there's three quite simple basic factors what you do to put the defence under pressure. It's simple. You've got the ball in hand. If they don't come to you, they don't tackle you, then you go through. Secondly, the dummy runners, what you have at the side of you, them dummy runners have got to make sure that they are going to get the ball. So then that's holding the defence up again. And then thirdly, you decide whether you hit the so-called lead runner now or the guy at the back from there, but they've got to make sure they're looking as though that they are going to get the ball, which then you're in charge on 3 different occasions. You decide if you run, hit the lead runner or the back runner, and that just holds the defence. And it's quite easily done, It's quite easy if players are allowed to express themselves. And then also, if you feel as though you've got the Wally Louis pass in you, you've got a fourth option where missing these 2 guys out here, slinging it just nicely over the top to get over the top of the defences. But also, too, what I don't often see nowadays, certainly with stand-off halves, because I like to see stand-off halves playing second man out, gives them more time. But what I don't see often enough is the stand-off halves running and going to the line, because that holds them up straight away.
What about
holds them up straight away.
What about another tactic, Gary, that you often used to use, which is chipping over the defence?
Yeah, well, that's they're not allowed to do it now, are they?
No, well, they don't seem to, do they?
I know for
not many of them anyway.
They're not allowed to anymore, and also too when we talk about going for interceptions. And another thing, what I would like to see, but coaches don't allow it, and because the game as a whole has changed dramatically. I.e., because back in our days, when you were coming from your own try line to 30 metres out, the forwards used to take the ball. Today, it's wingers, centres, full back, and then the kick. You get 40-30 yards away from the opposite try line. Then you got the forwards taking drives in. Some of them playing first man for second man.
Yeah.
No. What I would like to see more, because certainly if I was playing today as a stand-off half, I would be looking from my own 30-40 yards out, and I'd be saying to my centres, "Hey, a bit short here on defence. I'm going to sling in a 15-20 yarder." That's exactly what I used to do with Kevin Iro and Craig Innes when I played at Leeds from there with Great Britain, with Paul O'Loughlin and Darryl Powell and the likes from there, because it's quite easily, and it's a lot easier to move the ball quicker when they're not expecting it defensively, and then your outside centres get on the back, making 40-50 yards quite easily. I like to play into space. I like to play into space. Play what you see.
Which is pretty obvious,
Of course
actually,
it is. It's easily done. It's, when you look at a rugby league pitch, it's 79 yards wide from there, and I say I just don't like this crash bound. I certainly don't like. And again, it's what the Aussies have brought in, so we've copied it. I hate to see wingers taking drives. I hate to see centres taking drives. That's the job of the donkeys.
Yeah.
That's the job. Donkeys. Okay, then forwards. Or you might not like it forwards, but that's the job of the donkeys. You do the hard yards and let the pretty boys then do the attractive stuff, because that's what people come. That's what people want to watch.
Do you think teams are overcoached these days?
Without it. No two ways about it.
Yeah.
No two ways about it. Players at times, they're frightened to death of expressing themselves.
Yeah, because of what the coach might say to them.
Yeah, it so annoys me. And what did we say? What did I say about Frank Stanton? Stanton, give me that free roll. How many coaches would you say to players today? Jack Wellsby Paul Wellens might be the one who'll say it to Jack Wellsby. They'll say, "Listen, you've got a free roll. Play what you see." I don't think there'll be too many.
The only coach who I can think sort of has some of that philosophy, and I don't know whether you'd agree with me, is Paul Rowley at Salford.
Yeah, but
I think Paul Rowley does allow his team to play as he sees it.
I'd like Tony Smith as well. Tony Smith likes to play an open, attractive game as well. From there. Yeah. But overall, I'd say players realistically they've got to stick to what the coach tells them, and if they don't. well, they get dropped, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's something I'd like to see a little bit more. I know from the NRL, like the Sydney Roosters, I know they've implemented it a little bit, letting Joey Manu sort of roam a little bit, because obviously he has aspirations to play fullback, but when you got the Australian fullback and captain as your number one, it's a bit hard.
You see. Also, another thing what was brought in over here, and also the same is brought in from the Australians, where one half-back plays to the left and one plays to the right. That's rubbish. That is absolute garbage. Let me tell you this. Andrew Johns would never have been told to play left and right. Jonathan Thurston would never have been told to play left and right. Darren Lockyer would never have been told to play left and right.
No. Because it becomes predictable for the defence.
Brad Flickner would never be. So where we've got this from, this is what the Aussies do, because this is what we tend to have done since 1982, to be honest with you. But I can't remember. Well, certainly when you look at 82, Wally never played that way. Brett Kenny never played that way. Peter Sterling never played that way.
No.
And certainly Andrew Johns, Fittler and Thurston and all that have never played that. But now we get a left and right half back. What's all that about? Come
Ridiculous.
on, please.
Just on coaching, Jake, you were at Wigan yesterday, weren't you? They had a sort of open day for the media to go and join them, at their sort of, to watch them being coached and so on and so forth. Just tell us a bit about it, because obviously it sounded really interesting from what you've said about it before the podcast.
No, it was great. So basically, Wigan had their open media day yesterday. They went through some final pre-season tests. So basically what happens, they come in day one pre-season, they do a bunch of tests to see where their fitness level is at, and then over the next few weeks, obviously they work to improve those fitness levels, and then do some more testing right at the end to see if they have improved and reached those benchmarks that they set for them. But it was really interesting. One of the tests they did was the yo-yo test, which is very similar to the beep test, if anyone's done that, where you pretty much, I think there's about 10 metres or so, or I don't know what that is in yards, but you sort of have to run from one line to the next and basically beat a beep that will play on like a stereo. So eventually, the more back and forth you do, the beeps come, faster and quicker. So you've got to be, lifting the speed that you're running. And some of the players, obviously, Jay Field, you can expect that he will go very well in that test, and he did do very well. I think he won the backs, and Cruz Leeming, I think he won the forwards. Obviously, hookers are very, very fit.
Interesting. Cruz Leeming, a new signing for Wigan this year, did he look to be in good nick?
Oh, very good shape. Luke Thompson looked very fit. I was saying to you guys before, he has arms the size of my head. I was in awe just standing next to him looking at his physique. It was incredible access that Wigan gave us. Essentially, we were just walking around them as they were doing their tests, and we had free reign. We could go and grab a player just as long as they weren't doing the drills. So I had the pleasures of speaking to Matty Pete, Luke Thompson, Adam Kearnan, another one of their new signings, and they really made us feel comfortable, and it was great insight into how pre-seasons are run and how far I guess the game has come over the past few years. One of the things they touched on was how much sports science has come into it now, and I guess with all the technology we have, that's a lot easier to implement into our game. But one of the other interesting things they did was they brought all the media in around this TV and just showed us some of the things that they look for in defence these days, coming up, and the importance of having your hips square to the defensive line, so players don't beat you on the inside shoulder, or if you turn your shoulder inside, that they're not beating you on the outside then, and just little things like how they like to set their numbers either side of the ruck. How they defend it at the back as well. It's just, a lot more goes into it than the average viewer would
I'll tell you what, it's really interesting at Wigan, because last year I went across there, not with the rest of the media, but on an individual day with Matty Pete. And I was able to talk to Matty quite a long time, but also watch them training. And on that particular day, the whole of their training was based on picking up loose balls on the field. So in other words, every time a ball comes loose, make sure that we get it, in whatever situation it comes loose in. And they'd sort of created a sort of special game, sort of half soccer, half rugby, to, facilitate doing that. And it was really interesting to watch. And there was another guy with me on that day from, I think it was from Saracens Rugby Union Club. and he was picking up loads of tips for training for their setup, and saying, this is absolutely great, and it was, and it's very creative, and although I think Matty Pete is making a real reputation for himself as a leading coach at the moment.
I think he's done a great job, hasn't he? And also, when Wigan gave him the job 2 years ago, you opened a few eyebrows. Jeez,
nobody knew who he was.
Is he going to be good enough? Is he the right character? Is he the right person? But he's got the Wigan DNA. He's been there for many, many years, and the smart move what he did, he brought Lee Breers in. What a great side he was, an assistant coach from there.
Yeah.
The players, what they got, the philosophy, what they played from there, he's doing a magnificent job, and the players what they have signed this year, and I say, Jake, I've predicted, but I'll say to you Wigan fans, don't be disliking me, because I'm telling you, I'm predicting you to not just to wrap up this season, but I think for a few, maybe 3 or 5 years to come, because not just the quality of what they've got already, i.e. the two best players in Super League for mine is French and Jai Field. Harry Smith is coming along now, but the 4 signings they have made, they are the team to beat.
They're all good ones, aren't they?
Yeah, they are quality. The recruitment's been brilliant. Sure, they're the team to beat this year, and I predicted them to wrap it all up this year.
Do you think they'll beat Penrith though, Gary?
Penrith will want revenge. I know it wasn't against Wigan last year; it was against St Helens. So want revenge, won't they? Is Cleary coming?
Yes,
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Right. Well,
Jerome Luai might not be. I'm not sure.
Right.
It's not certain yet whether he's going to recover from the shoulder.
Well, Cleary. I know he played last year, but he may not be. But they want revenge. They want revenge. But you know what? I've got to go for the British side. And again, you Wigan fans, I'm going for you to win. Well, I think I predicted it in column, didn't I? I think I predicted it 3 or 4 weeks ago that yes, they're going to be World Club. Wigan love this trophy, don't they? They love being called World Club Challenge. And
Penrith have
winners.
never won it. They've failed 3 times.
Yeah.
So that's a sore point with them, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think they're going to be home between the tail and the legs, and so come on,
the
Warriors.
Just quickly, the one thing I will ask you guys, now it's a bit of a quiz here. So one of the tests that Wigan did was how many reps every player can do of 100 kilograms on a bench press. So just your standard barbell bench press. Who do you think out of the Wigan squad did the most reps, and I guess how many reps do you think they did?
Well, I would guess, from what you've said already, I would guess Luke Thompson. Ooh, crikey, how many? I have no idea. Maybe 100?
No, Martin, no.
No.
I can good because I'm going to go.
Shows how much I know.
You know what I'm thinking? I'm not even going to go for a forward, because back in our day we had a winger called. He came from Rugby Union, and he was a lazy so-and-so, quick as hell. Jim Fallon. Jim. We had the nickname Jim but Dim. You know what I mean? The Jim, but boy oh boy, could he bench press? And it's sick, because to be honest with you, he was the laziest trainer, but he was ripped, absolutely ripped, and he could run like a greyhound. He could score your tries as well when he gave him the opportunity, and he'd go in the gym and he'd just go,
yes, I wonder what happened to him.
Have I got to rip some of these out? It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. So Jim Fallon was one of our strongest players when Jim played for us. So I'm not going to go for a forward. I'm going to go for a back. I'm going to go for Bevan French.
No, so both wrong. Sorry, fellas. But if you, I guess I can't really ask you how many you thought he got out. But Tyler,
let me just 100 kgs. 22.
Oh, you're close. So you got the player wrong. It was Tyler Dupree, and he had 23 reps, which I think, for context, some of the backs were pumping out 2 or 3 reps, or 3 or 4 reps around there, which is, for their body size, I guess,
so
not too bad.
15 and 18 and 1, so that's not bad.
Yeah,
it's not bad, is it? Yeah, it's not bad.
So I mean, I didn't get to watch all of them. I'm pretty sure they said that Tyler Dupree set the benchmark at the start. So, but yeah, that's quite incredible considering that amount of weight and the lactic acid build up. So, one thing I will say about the World Club Challenge: if it's raining and it's wet and it's cold, I don't know if Penrith will like to play in those conditions. I believe it rained in Australia for that World Club Challenge.
It
went against them.
Yeah.
So,
let's hope it's raining. Let's hope it's freezing cold, and we give it to you Aussies again.
Well, I disagree, Gary. I hope it's fabulous weather. It's sunny. And mind you, it won't because it's playing at night, isn't it? But it's a beautiful,
and
dry,
it's in Wigan, Martyn,
warm evening.
and it's in Wigan in February.
I don't want to give Penrith any excuses.
That's a fair call.
No excuses whatsoever.
Yeah,
I want to see them going home with the tail between their legs, but with no excuses.
Actually, that was the same when we beat Australia in Melbourne 1992. We smacked the backside 33 points, and Bobby Fulton blamed the evening because it was so wet, and also too they had their own size studs in the boots because they didn't realise how slippy it was.
The Aussies always. We've got an Aussie here.
Be careful what you guys say.
The Aussies always have a good excuse when they don't win. Mind you, it's not very often they don't, is it? But
correct.
Great,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Just a couple other questions I'd just like to ask you, Gary. There's a few things that people are sort of in uproar or questioning that's happening in our league at the moment. Obviously, the big news in the last month or so is the RFL's plans to change the tackling height. That's going to be brought in from 2025 to lower it to around the shoulders or armpits. Do you think this will make the game safer?
Well, unfortunately, because of what's going off the field, it has to be, doesn't it? It's as simple as that. You can certainly see now in the other code, anything around from, even if it's accidental, and with the situation, what's going off the field, there's only one thing can they do, and that's it. Is it going to be the same game? No, it's not. Are people going to watch it? Well, again, I've said in my column from there, it's all going to depend on the referees. It depends it all depends. If we're going to bring a stop-start game, common sense has to prevail at times. Well, not just at times, plenty of the time as well. Because if it's not, and it becomes that stop-start game, because it has been trialled in the academy games, and I'm led to believe at times there's been between 60 and 70 penalties per game. We don't want to see that. If we see that, then there'll be nobody watching the sport.
No. But as players become used to it, it goes down a bit. Isn't it?
Well, because what I said in my column 4 or 5 weeks ago is what I would do now, and I would bring it in this season, because don't just bring it in all at once, because this is where you're going to get, maybe the stop-start games and all these penalties. I would make 3 changes. I would bring in the 2 tackle man rule. So that's the first man goes low, second man, then stop the ball carrier, and the ball's here, so that's below your chest. And then I would bring in the 5 metre rule. So the 5 yard. So again, when you look at that impact, because when you look at players now, they're 10 metres apart. Some of them are starting to run 10 metres, so you got 20 metres. So bring them closer together, so you stop that massive impact. And then also I'd bring it back where there's only 2 subs, because what that does then, everybody stays on the pitch longer. The so-called fatigue factor comes in from there, and I think players would love it, because some front rowers, they don't want to be coming off after 15, 20 minutes. They want to stay on. They want to stay on longer. And then also too as well, when players get tired, you see more of the little guys and all this sort of thing. The more of the ball players who
the big guys are easier to beat.
Correct. So more space, and so I think we'll have a more open, attractive game if we make it 2 rules. So 2-man tackle rule, 5 yard rule, and 2-man on the bench. And I think we have a more attractive, productive game.
One of the other rule changes we've seen in the NRL is the short kickoff. So now, if you do not make that 10 metres from a dropout or a kickoff, teams won't be penalised. Instead of a penalty, it'll be a play the ball. Now, one of the interesting things I saw, quite a popular page on Instagram and social media, is the NRL physio. Now, one of the things he said is he believes that this rule is brought in to help combat concussions that happen from the kickoff. Now, obviously, you've got that rushing defensive line that's running from halfway down to about the 10 metre line, and a lot of concussions do come from that first sort of impact. And he thinks that this might be the NRL trying to discourage people or encourage people to do the short dropout. Now, apparently the NRL's come out, a few days later and say, yes, that is something that we considered when we brought in this rule. So we're seeing in the NFL at the moment, they're trying to incentivise punt returners and kick returners to let the ball go. So I think in the NFL, off a kickoff, when the ball goes over the dead ball line, they bring the ball out to the 25-yard line. So whereas when the kick returner often catches the ball, it's not often that they make it to the 25-yard line before they're tackled. So there's no real incentive to return the ball. So I don't know. It's an interesting one.
See, also what's going to be an interesting factor is anybody, let's just say, for instance, a reaction, sticks an arm out this and gets sent off. It's going to be interesting what the discipline is going to, how many matches they're going to get. It's going to be, it's a game changer. The game is going to change from there, but I think common sense has to prevail.
Just one other question from me to you, Gary, as we're nearing the end of the podcast, but The opening game of the season, Hull v Hull KR. Do you think that's a great way to open the season, and who'll win it?
I certainly do. I don't think there's anything more I want to do than a Hull derby. Than a Hull derby, that's for sure. I would have preferred it to be more of a Saturday or a Saturday afternoon from there for the city itself. From there, and I think it wouldn't have been an issue whatsoever of selling it out. But I think it's an absolute blockbuster from the first game of the season on Sky. From there, I was reading about Tony Smith yesterday in League Express about the team. Again, a big, massive change, as Tony said, and it did need changing. They've got a younger squad, more athletic squad, and that's what he had to address. But Hull Kingston Rovers, I tell you what, Willie Peters, the way that he's addressing things both on and off the field, it is in a very, very professional manner. He doesn't want last season to be a one-off. He wants it, and it's that word in sport that should be used massively, not just for teams but also too for players themselves. Consistency. That's what he wants, Willie Peters. That is what Tony Smith will want on the first game of the season. Is it the 16th of February, 17th of February we kick off?
15th, I think.
Is it the 15th? Anyway, yeah. So, but a blockbuster. Black and whites via the red and whites. Oof, I'm here on the podcast, aren't I? Yeah. I think Tony Smith will get a reaction. I'm going to go the black and whites to win by 7.
Absolutely, yeah. It's going to be a fascinating evening, isn't it? And in fact, talking about Willie Peters, I wrote a piece in my column looking back a year. Because almost exactly a year ago, Hull KR travelled to Featherstone and got beat 28-0 in a pre-season game, and Willie Peters went up the wall with it.
He must have thought, what have I come here for?
And it just shows pre-season games don't really mean much, do they, when the season starts? And they had a great season. Yeah. And Featherstone, I think I predicted a year ago, Featherstone were going to win everything and Sean Long was going to have a great year. And, of course, he left before the season ended.
Martyn as well. Can I just mention, because on Sunday, Paul Gill, my ex-teammate, he's been diagnosed with M&D, and can I just say, Bradford play Leeds on Sunday, and Bradford have made Paul a guest of honour.
That's marvellous.
They've made him a guest of honour on Sunday. They've given us the Trevor Foster suite. They've given us 130 tickets, 50 for Paul's family, 40 for Leeds ex-players and the friends, and 40 for ex-Bradford players and their friends from there. We're going to have 130 people in the Trevor Foster suite. Also, as well, they're putting a buffet in for us. And speaking to Nigel Wood as well yesterday, another great thing what Bradford are doing on Sunday, they're having a bucket collection as well. So all I want to do is say, Nigel, and to everybody at the Bradford Bulls, thanks very much for what you're doing for Paul Gill this Sunday. And Bradford and Leeds, if you know what to do, anybody from Rugby League, get yourself out there and, as I say, support Paul Gill.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, and give Paul our best wishes.
I will indeed, Martyn, without a doubt.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Garry, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure being able to pick your brain about some of the issues we have here in the rugby league, and also reflect on some of the great moments in your career, mate. So
it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much. And at the end of the day, what we all want. Let Rugby League be the winner. Thanks very much.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Garry.
And don't forget, guys, if you do want to read Garry's column in the League Express weekly newspaper, you can head along to www.totalrl.com/shop to get your subscription. And that's this week's front cover. Heaps of interesting stuff in there this week, Martyn.
All the stuff about Hull FC, fascinating stuff, actually. And Tony Smith, he talks a good game, and let's hope he delivers a good game, because we need a strong Hull FC in rugby league, in my view. So good luck to Tony, and good luck to everybody in Hull for a great opening to the season.
Absolutely. It's just around the corner. All right, man. Well, thanks heaps for joining us, guys. And, we'll end it here.
Thanks, Jake.